Well, we started in the late 1980s, in fact. I happened to be the leader of what was then AusAid team. Went to do an economics study of Eastern Indonesia. We had a conference, produced a report, and then someone who was going later to become a great colleague of ours said to us, "Is this going to be another dusty report on a shelf?" And that really stimulated us to think that we should do more. And that's really why the NTA started. We have a staff of 26 paid individuals in Indonesia, mainly extension officers, quite a lot of Indonesian volunteers and maybe about 40 Australian volunteers as well. And we focus on rural development in eastern Indonesia and specifically in West Timor and Flores, trying to do what we can to improve the conditions of these poor rural families.
NTA is committed to durable and lasting improvements. We've been working with these local communities for 25 years. Really, over that time, we've been able to hone our approaches to ensure that they're sustainable and they meet the needs of the local people. And this is really important to ensure that their lives are really changed for the better.
I mean, basically, these people are subsistence farmers. I mean, when we first went there, the main activity was producing enough food to eat and getting a few things which helped their standard of living. But as time went on, it became evident to us and to them that income generation was also possible. So we started working on that.
Water tanks are one of the main areas in which we really change people's lives. Once we provide tanks which are filled from off the roof, they have more time. And what this means is the children are more able to attend school, and the adults, typically it means that they can concentrate on income production and food production. For example, in Harby Village in Flores, the local women, as soon as they got tanks, started to develop vegetable growing on small tables. Within a very short time, we found that not only did they have additional food and variety of food to address malnutrition, but they had excess which they could sell. This increased their incomes for each household by 10 to 30%.
The main stakeholders, of course, we're dealing with are the farmers themselves. And amongst the farmers, we've learned over time to work initially with what we call petani maju. These are progressive farmers. And we've chosen such people who are also socially conscious to work with them first. And gradually the innovation is introduced in an initial DEM plot, and then later it spreads to the surrounding areas. This is a basis of what we do.
We aim at building capacity at two basic levels. One is with the communities themselves, and the other is with the local NGOs that we work with. So they're the people that supervise and assist with implementing the activities. We've been working with the same NGOs now for almost the whole 25 years. They retain their staff for long periods of time. We have a very low turnover of staff. So any work that we put into them is retained in the local area. We bring in experts from Australia, typically volunteers, and we'll bring in some experts from Indonesia. We run field days and demonstration plots so that we work through those skills and gradually develop them. With the local communities, we get them to form community groups, which typically have about 10 to 15 families. We stay with them over a number of years, and we help them to develop the skills gradually, and then after a number of years, when we assess that they're of a suitable capacity, we'll move on and cycle to a new community.
All the ideas of what projects we're doing come from the people themselves. I mean, they were the ones that suggest they want water tanks or teacher training or whatever. We tend on the whole to follow that. We want them to feel responsible and a sense of ownership of what they're doing. So we never give people the total resources they require. So with a water tank, for example, we would provide maybe 3/4 of the cash needed for cement and other purchased items, but they would provide all the local materials and also all the labour and also the management, and sometimes also the services of a local builder that they would want to retain to help them. We've found that on-site training is much more effective than training at some in some classroom. With the agricultural activities, the most fruitful thing, and I also learn a lot from, we stand around in groups in the field discussing things, and one of our group is demonstrating, say, pruning techniques or bud grafting techniques, and the farmers are asking questions, and these are groups of maybe 20 to 25 people, where people aren't afraid of asking questions. With education, we've also found the same thing. We used to have, until quite recently, central training in a big town called Kupang and Maumere. After representations at the Musiawara, the teachers said to us, it's much better if you have the teacher training in the local areas where many more teachers can take part and there can be much freer interaction. So we were tended to apply that principle across the board with everything. We tried to match the Indonesian social structure. I mean, that's really our starting point. And what we've learned is that the traditional Indonesian organization called a kelompok, this is a group of 10 or 15 households, is the best structure to work with. So we work closely within these groups. We never give any activities to individuals. We always give it to the kelompok. Kelompok is a democratic organization. The head of the kelompok, who's an elected person, will discuss with the colleagues, and they will choose someone who's suitable to get the next water tank or who should be included in the improvement program. It's not perfect, of course, and sometimes you get leaders who are a little bit too autocratic, but it is a good system, and we've followed it all the way through, as have the Australian-Indonesian Extension Services at the government. They also do the same thing. Once a year we have so-called Musiawara, which is a big community meeting, and these are selected representatives of kelompok and schools who come together. And during those meetings, people break up into small 10 to 15 groups with whiteboards. At the plenary session, the leader of each small group makes a presentation, and that's where we got the idea of decentralising the training that I mentioned earlier.
We meet also with the local government departments in Indonesia and with other NGOs and other organisations to ensure that we're working in a way that is consistent across Indonesia, so that we're addressing the gaps. At the provincial level, we meet with the departments that are involved in agricultural extension, education and general planning. It's critical that the government departments are aware of what we're doing and that they're comfortable with what we're doing. From our perspective, we need their support, but we also need to ensure that what we're doing complements what they're doing, and that there is some consistency and that we're not working across them or duplicating their efforts.
Under traditional law or adat, there's a very strong sense of sustainability. I mean, people wanting to sustain their environment, they're not wanting to deplete it.
Well, the local communities that we work with are generally committed to sustainability, but they don't necessarily have all the skills, so we work with them on that. They work in heavily modified environments. These are environments that have been used for agriculture for hundreds of years. So we work with them to address potential erosion through techniques such as better terracing. We work with them to improve the quality of the soil through composting and other techniques, and to use techniques that ensure the long-term sustainability of those plots.